In this lesson, we're going to be covering what JSON is and how it works. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which is a format for sending data back and forth, commonly used in conjunction with AJAX, where we've got communication between the browser and the server, and it needs to pass data back and forth within some type of format. So originally that was XML, and hence the name AJAX with the X on the end was commonly used. And then JSON came, and now more and more web application developers are using JSON, and it's actually the most common format for data transfer across different platforms between browsers and server and so on. And that's because JSON is based on a very basic data structure. So it's textual, it's language independent, and it's the best way to exchange data. So similar to other XML, CSV, or YAML that have been used previously and still are used now, JSON again is the most popular format for this data exchange. And once you see JSON, you're going to see why. So there are some JSON really good points to using JSON, and of course it's the most widely used for APIs. So almost every API uses JSON. Sometimes they'll have other formats as well, but it is by far the best way to exchange data. So most APIs are using it. It also works really seamlessly between different languages, from the front-end coding to the back-end server side and more. It's also most popular, and it works well with NoSQL databases like MongoDB, so those are ideal for JSON format. It also works extremely well with AJAX, jQuery, where we can call it in and bring in JSON formatted data really easily and parse through it, and also convert it to a string, which we are going to be showing you in the upcoming lessons. So JSON is an open, it's text-based, it's lightweight, and it's the best way to exchange data. So some of the benefits, again, it's easy to read, it's language independent, it's scalable, so it's really easy to add more data and understand where to place that data. So very flexible. There's different data types that we can go and place into JSON format. So numbers, strings, booleans, arrays, and objects. And of course, we are going to be covering those in the upcoming lessons. So here we go. So this is an example of JSON. So you can really easily just take a look at this, and you can see that this is a person. So their first name, last name, is alive, age, address, phone numbers, children, spouse. So it's basically used just as JavaScript objects actually give properties and actually can describe something. JSON, because it's being based on JavaScript objects, it works in a very similar fashion, and again, really easy to read. So when you output it in this type of format, you can see what values, what are the object values that you can return back and really easily access them. So JSON is more concise than XML. XML is much longer and looks way more complex. So this is again why JSON is being used. We are also going to look at how we can parse strings into JSON and then parse objects back into strings, all via JavaScript. So JavaScript is at the very core of front-end web development, and JavaScript works extremely well with JSON, as you would expect, because it's based on the JavaScript object. So there are some differences between the JavaScript object literals and JSON. So JSON follows that object keys must be strings, so they're enclosed in double quotes, whereas JavaScript objects are a little bit more flexible. The values can be string, number, JSON object, array, boolean, null, and the same goes for JavaScript objects. The way it handles duplicate keys is also slightly different. And of course, in JavaScript literals, we can have things like functions, and we don't have to have quotes around them. So there are obvious differences. So you can't always take a JavaScript object and dump it in and use it as JSON format. So something to keep in mind. And of course, we are going over this in the upcoming lessons. There's some really good resources to lint out JSON. So these are just some of them, and of course we are going to be looking at them. And the reason that you lint out JSON is so that's a lot more readable. So typically it's just crunched with no white space, just like minified JavaScript files or CSS files. So to make it a lot more readable, we lint it, and that makes it so that we could really easily kind of just take a look at it and get that data out. So I hope you are excited and ready to start working with JSON, because in the next lesson, we're going to dive right in. We're going to be starting out with looking at JavaScript objects, how they work, because they so closely relate to JSON. So once you understand those, you'll understand JSON. So we are going to start working in our editor. We're going to be using brackets as our editor. So I've set up a basic HTML template, nothing in it, just called it index.html. And this is going to be where our starting point is, where we're going to start to write some JavaScript code. So that's coming up in the next lesson.